So our next speaker is Dr. Rathana Peou Norbert-Munns. Dr. Norbert-Munns has worked at Utrecht University with the Copernicus Institute as a policy researcher and as the Southeast Asia Scenarios Coordinator at the Climate Change, Agriculture, and Food Security since 2017, prior to which she was at Oxford University at the Environmental Change Institute. She joined the CCAFS, the Climate Change, Agriculture, and Food Security Scenarios team in 2012, first as the Scenarios Coordinator for South Asia, and is now based in Cambodia, where she provides technical support on climate smart agriculture and builds capacity on foresight-based policy formulations in agriculture, food security, and climate change. Dr. Norbert-Munns' research interest lies in four inviolate principles, is what she refers to them, four inviolate principles: food security, water security, energy security, and social health security. Her current research concerns the future of food security, agriculture, and climate change in the ASEAN, or Association of Southeast Asian Nations. She holds a PhD in political science, majoring in philosophy. The title of her talk today is Discussion of the Futures of Food, Water, and Energy Securities in Southeast Asia and Anticipatory Governance Practices. We welcome Dr. Norbert-Munns.
Good evening and good morning to you all. It's a real pleasure to join this virtual conference on climate crisis seeking solution. I'd like to thank the organizer for the invitation and the opportunity for me to discuss this subject that I have at heart for several years. Thank you, Professor, as well for your introduction. I would like to start the presentation today with a public apology. And I think that's quite important for me to start here. It's a virtual platform. I don't know most of you. I noticed that we are now 47 people in this platform. I don't know your background, your expertise. I do hope that the next 45 minutes I'm not going to repeat things that you know already. I hope that it will more support your reflection when we think about water, energy, and the food nexus. It will help us to think as well today and to think about the future. So I organized my presentation in 4 different ways so that it can actually address a diverse type of audience. I trust as well that we have the end part, which will be question and answer, which I hope as well that will be as dynamic as with the previous presenter. If we look at this picture, this is a picture that I have really in mind quite a lot. It was one of my first regional workshops in Southeast Asia. And what you can see directly is a time frame, a timeline, 2015. And I remember that one of our participants, one of the policymakers we were working with at that time, told me that 2050 was way too far and that by then we will all be dead. I think that, sorry, just going to take off the note on it. Sorry. As you can see my note as well. So in 2050, for these participants, what happened was thinking long term was something that he felt was extremely nervous and putting to him a lot of responsibility. The responsibility to think to another generation, the responsibility to think outside a 5-year mandate. And I think that it's where it's very important when we talk about water, energy, and food nexus when we think about the present and the future. When we think about the key questions related to climate change, thinking about the time frame and what does it mean to think today about the future, it's of essence. It's not something that is easy. As Professor just said during the introductions, I work for CCAFS, which is a research program on climate change, agriculture, and food security. I have had about 12 years of experience now in South Asia and Southeast Asia, where I choose to live since 12 years now. I work with the research team on priority and policy for CSA, and we work in different type of research action or project on climate smart agriculture, capacity enhancement, and planning and monitoring. As I said before, I work and I'm based in Southeast Asia, which is currently home to 650 million people, and where I work primarily in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, which has in common that about 60 to 70% of the population currently work in the agriculture sector. When we think globally and we think about more data coming from the rich country, livelihood related normally to agriculture will represent, or workforces related to agriculture will represent only 5%. I'm from a region where manpower still be mainly and heavily placed in agriculture, hence as well in rural area. And I work for a university as well. Today's presentation have 4 key objectives, and I really hope that you will follow me in the next 40 minutes now. The first one is to understand key concepts and approaches related to the water, energy, and nexus. Number 2 is to build knowledge around water, energy, food security, and climate change impact. Number 3, developing knowledge on climate foresight and scenario use. Number 4, reflect on and discuss what do we mean by anticipatory governance and what is that nexus in practice in Southeast Asia. There's not really a lot of surprise here that the structure then is going to be following more or less the same with 4 different parts. What you can see is that from the part number 1 to the part number 4, I'm trying to follow a process where we come from knowledge to practice. And I think that's a key message that the first presenter was emphasizing, which is, what do we mean? We need more leadership in climate change. Well, in Southeast Asia, leadership is something that is taken extremely seriously as being one of the regions the most vulnerable to climate change. A lot of action, a lot of policy have been emerged already over the last 20 years now. And a lot of that can be understood by the way policymakers in the region have been understanding the water, energy, and food nexus already. We can start with the first part now, and I don't know if some of you have been familiar with a Rubik's Cube when you were younger. Maybe some of you are already a specialist and will be able to solve this within 1 minute. I personally think that it's a very useful image when we think about water, energy, food, as well health, but I'm going to focus more on water, energy, and food in Southeast Asia. Why is that a great image or a relevant image? Because it allows us to understand how we are interconnected, how connectivity and how we are linked to each other, how one surface will impact the other one. And I think that it's something of essence again for this presentation. key definition, and I'm sure that many of you know already what nexus mean or what security mean. But what I want to be sure is that you understand what is water security, energy security, and food security. I took different working definition from different type of agents. One of the easy way would be just to follow the one related to FAO. But I really want you to understand that the discussion related to water, energy, and food security, and with the water, energy, and food security, nexus is not something a lot of research have been already published, and since more or less the late 2000, a lot of political discourse have been emerged out of it. When we think about water security, and I think that it's very important for you to think this way, is don't just read the definition, just think on your own as an individual, what does it mean? What does it mean to be water secure? What does it mean for your household? What does it mean for your community? What does it mean for your country? In my place where I am right now in Cambodia, water security is not just about the availability of fresh water. It's looking at the river, which is just a couple of meters away, which is the Mekong River from my side, which is shared by 6 different countries, from China to Vietnam, which provide livelihood to more than 50% of all of the fishermen that we will have in the region. Water security needs to be understood in the most largest way, but the most specific and contextualized way as well. And this is where the Nexus approach is helping individual policymaker, civil servant to really think outside the box. I can go on as well with the energy and the food security, but just with the constraint of time, I really want us just to continue. And if I have a bit more time at the end of the presentation, we focus again about the energy security and the food security. You must have seen some similar image related to the water, energy, and food mixes. Once again, it's very important to understand how we are linked to each other, how the food we produce, the food that we are transporting, what we are trading, the way we are living, are all based on fundamental resources that we are all sharing. And most of the energy that we have right now need water. The electricity sector, for example, uses 143 billion gallons of fresh water a day to run power plants. It's extremely important as well to look at energy and food. It's not about what we produce in an agricultural land, but it's how we're going to process that food, how we're going to transport that food, where we're going to sell it. That's extremely important. When you think about food right now in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, Vietnam, or Laos, think about one type of crop, like rice, which is the staple food for most of the people in Southeast Asia. Food as such, rice is being produced, but it's being processed, need energy to be processed, and to be transported, to be packaged, and to be sold. So when you think about the value chain related to a crop like rice, the agriculture part, the farmer part, is just a little part of all of that chain. Understanding the world, the water, energy, and food mixes again, is key because we are luckily having a global framework that acknowledges water, food, and energy as being main priority for sustainable development. Most of you, I'm sure, are aware about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Most of you will know about the SDG 2, 6, and 7 that refer to food, water, and energy. And many of you will know as well of the SDG 13 related to climate change. What I want us to really think is that although we have a specific SDG on water, on food, and on energy, the SDG and the way it has been framed was that policymaker, individual, society think beyond a sector specific, think beyond just like one type of approach. And the NEXUS is really allowing this way of thinking outside, but across sector. So what does the NEXUS really mean? I like to use that definition from a colleague. Water, energy, food nexus is an approach, a mindset. It means keeping in mind the other sector when working in one sector to increase either water security, energy security, or food security. This definition was provided by Luca Ferrini, which is the regional coordinator for the NEXUS dialogue in the Niger River Basins. And I think that is a very important one. As such, a lot of things have been written about water, energy, food nexus. It's a concept, but it's as well an approach. It's as well a mindset, and it's a mindset that we're trying to induce in order to ensure sustainable development. So it's a concept that is supposed to be communicative enough to be spread and to be translated not only to an academician or a student, but as well to a farmer, a policymaker again, a businessman. Moving to the second part of the presentation, from my experience, a lot of people misunderstand that linkage between water, energy, and food. And many of them will say, I don't know what to think about it. And it's very difficult when in my position as a regional scenario coordinator to say, well, it's not about thinking, it's actually about knowing. When we discuss with policymakers, what they say is like, so where is the fact? And when we are talking to them, we usually say, well, listen, there have been many research already. We have accumulating data already that demonstrates the impact of climate change on water, food, and energy. We are working currently with different models that allow other policymakers to think about the future, to plan for the future. And I think that's why I integrated this part to this presentation, because I think it's very important to come to an understanding of the amounts of knowledge and information that is already available. One of the things, and I'm using one of these this article, Closing the Governance Gap in the Water, Energy, Food Nexus, is out of the literature review done by Nina Wells, is that there is two consistent things when we look at the water, energy, and food literature. First one is that all of the case, policy are fragmented across the water, energy, and food sector. Hence why usually you have a limited positive impact of it. Second point is that the goal is to achieve policy coherence. So all of them have a vision, that vision really focusing on the synergy, looking at the synergy and the trade-off. So you are looking to a literature right now that understand that, yes, they are a vision, but that vision identifies synergy and trade-off and trying not to have the ultimate policy option, the magical policy option, which actually doesn't really exist, but the one that is the most appropriate or the most relevant according to the government, according to the context where you are working. And I think this is very important. There is no magical formula. What we see right now and the way I look at the water, energy, food mixes, I see that as a part of the political discourse, as something that is transformative. It goes beyond a concept, it goes beyond a mindset. It's something that is a stimulus, especially when we are working with climate change. So at present, the challenges related to water, energy, and food, and what we understand already as being the disparity, 0.9 billion people still have no access to clean water, 1.1 billion have no access to electricity, 1 billion have insufficient food supply. When we look at this first picture, and when we look at the future, which is increasing demand for food, for example, one can really reconsider if planet, the current planet we are living in, will be capable to support us. Projection is that by 2050, we will be 9.8 billion people, and by 2100, we will be 11 billion people. Are we going to be able to continue to use our water in the same way, produce electricity, and have enough food supply for all? One of the scary part all the time when we talk with our next user, policymaker and farmer, is there is no white and black storyline here. Yes, there is 1 billion people that are going hungry, but globally, as a global society, we do waste 1/3 of the food that we produce. So it's not so much about how much we can produce, but how we are producing that and how our food system is really implying a lifestyle. One of the important things people will say, well, we should prioritize agriculture. Agriculture is very important because it's going to allow us to produce more food and most affordable food, hopefully as well. But agriculture, when we look at it, is the largest contributor of non-carbon dioxide greenhouse gases. And if we look at the whole of food system emission, between 20 to 29% of it contribute to greenhouse emission. In Southeast Asia, although we are considered as one of the most vulnerable regions in the world, over the last 10 years, we have been one of the fastest regions in terms of carbon emission. It is extremely important, again, to understand the adaptations and the mitigation part, but understand as well that when you think about water, energy, and food, all of them are being interlinked together. All of them are part of a very complex system. Agriculture is responsible for 75% of the global deforestation. I won't discuss about Indonesia, Philippines. There's many discussions already and many research that are available. But it's extremely important for you as participant, and because you are already having an interest of it, to go a little bit deeper with those big facts, which are available on the CCAFS website. But watch as well a couple of video, and I put a list as well of resources at the end of this presentation. This table was taken from the IPCC report, the fifth assessment. And when you look at the Southeast Asia one, and we look at what we are being sure or not that will impact, you can see that freshwater resources, coastal system, food production system, all will be impacted at certain level. Now, the real question here is, we have all of those information. We have research and we have science that have been talking. We're capable to project even the decrease of yield, for example, for rice in Southeast Asia. But what does it mean? Who is going to take the action? And what action can really address water, food, and energy? What kind of policy can address different sectors at different scale and at different time? All of those have to be put again with a perspective that what it's really understood by is this increasing demand. If we're saying that we will need to increase, or the increase of demand for water will be increased by 30%, where are we going to get that water from? How are we going to rethink our irrigation system? There will be winner, there will be loser. I'm not going to go in depth with those different figure. They're all available on the PowerPoint as well that I shared, but as well again with our website, institutional website. What I want you to really realize, and I think it's in that part, is the impact of climate change on food, for example. There will be parts of the world, a part of country as well in South Asia, that will see a decline, and some that will see an increase. Now, not everything is negative about climate change. There are opportunities, and I think nations within the ASEAN have been understanding the opportunity related to climate change by adapting different sectors and planning for the future. One case, for example, is Vietnam. Vietnam will have policy on agriculture that will be up to 2050, long-term vision, with a vision that will be even overreaching to 2100. And I think that's very important, because if policy making and action are seen for the future and looking what should be available, what must be available, what should be accessible, what should be affordable, and for who. We are asking questions that are meaningful and that will be translated to, most probably, climate-proof policy. The next part is really about the work I'm doing, and again, like I have a couple of hats, and what I tried in this presentation is really not just giving you just different type of knowledge or theory, but trying to bring this process of knowledge towards action. So what we do are scenario, and we do that with different stakeholders. Scenario are acknowledged as a method, as a foresight method that supports governance. Scenario for the IPCC, I use that definition. It's a Korean consistent storyline that explores possible future state of the world or alternate state of system. Scenario one, let's give you a narration. What's the storyline? If you think about America in 2050, what will be the headline? What are the key indicators that we have today that can shape the future of 2050 of America? What will you put there? Will the COVID-19 really be still impacting in 2050? What is really the driver of change that we have, and how those are being matured for the future? Policymakers are increasingly using foresight. It's not something new. Foresight scenario have been used mainly as a strategic planning method, first with the military, a lot with finance and economy, but it's being used and more used in the public domain as well. And in climate change policy, this is really having an increase in terms of use. In our work and in the work we conducted in Cambodia and also in Vietnam, one of the main interests of the people we have or we're getting involved is when we talk about climate change, they will usually send just one type of people, someone from the Minister of Environment. But we usually ask, could we have as well someone from the Minister of Agriculture, but as well someone from the Minister of Planning, someone as well from another minister. And why is that important? Because if we don't think the future already across the sector with a very big emphasizing of coordinating, synchronizing policy of today's, what you're going to see at the end is going to be a chaotic national policy, not even talking about a chaotic regional policy. I won't focus again too much about the different steps, and I can again send more resources about it. But one way when we're looking into the future of climate policy in Southeast Asia and how we integrate water, energy, and food, we define what we call the change agent. Who are going to be the main stakeholders in the future? How can we be sure that we are inclusive in the way we are building and developing those narrative of the future? We try then to put in the same room not just scientists, researcher, or student, or the young generation. We try to have the farmer as well, the middleman as well. It's a very big effort of engaging and influencing then what are the futures and what the future need instead of the future we want. One of what you see on the screen right now and the table that I'm sharing, it's a list of different scenarios that we have been developing for Southeast Asia. And it's coming to the first speaker that, for example, management of carbon on land can be just one part of the solution. Well, scenario work teaches that as well, that there is different parts of solution, but all of those need to be put together. And what the water and energy and food nexus allow us to do is to frame them together, to allow us to think in a more comprehensive manner. So when we think about scenario related to climate change, we do think about agriculture, we do think about regional collaboration, land degradation, but we think as well about markets, finance, who is going to invest, what are we going to trade as well. The quantifying part is very important. Again, I can share the difference of our research on it and our work. What is very important is from the moment we use the water, energy, and food mixers with the scope, for example, of food scenario and food scenario for the future of climate change, the analysis that you're going to bring need to be then translated or bring back to those that can lead action. Leadership is extremely important in the work I'm doing. Not my leadership, but the audience, the people that have been working with us over the year in the region. Those are pictures from a workshop, just for you to understand as well that it's not just lecture. It's usually on a couple of days. We work with policymaker, planner that will come for 3 and 4 days, meet people from different countries, from Laos, from Vietnam or Myanmar, and better understand as well what are the different policy. And this is extremely important. The main value of our work is bringing collaboration and partnership. And collaboration and partnership across and beyond just the sector. This is the final part of my presentation. And I don't know, again, I mean, we will be about 40 people. Not a lot of job with my French accent, so that's good. But this last part is really about focusing and zooming in on Southeast Asia. As I said before, we cannot think about climate change and we cannot think about water, energy, and food without understanding deeply the context and the meaning of those words for not just policymaker, but for people which livelihood, which life will be just related to this unique part. So as I said before, Southeast Asia is one of the most vulnerable regions in the world when we think about climate change. Think directly about flood, heat wave, and cyclone. Some research also some projection already talk about 11% of the GDP in Southeast Asia that will be impacted by 2030 by the impact of climate change and mainly natural disaster. In the meantime, what I think it's very important is that over the last 8 years, 10 years, those countries in Southeast Asia have been extremely responsive to that climate change trend, and that have been not only trying to understand what would be the impact, but as well drafted and formulated policy and law on sector related to climate change, including agriculture, water, and food security. And I think this is a very positive sign. Leaders in Southeast Asia have been understanding the necessity of dealing with climate and with climate change. This map that I'm putting from Mabel is looking to the percentage of export value at risk by 2045. As you can see, this export at risk in Southeast Asia is about 5.2%, mainly going to be rice, cassava, soy, and for some cases as well, like fish. We have a map as such for the leader here in Southeast Asia. It's for them to understand what are the future food, for example, they could produce that will be less vulnerable to climate change. But as well understanding that that production will impact as well the way I look at the current Mekong River and the way I look at my relationship with the different countries that share as well this river. It is, I think, a lucky part with Southeast Asia is that they have to think not at the national level, but directly at the regional level. And it brings directly a sense of collaboration and partnership. The previous speaker was talking about peace and bringing and reflecting about this collaboration. I think in Southeast Asia, what we see over the years is moving towards that not only political discourse on sustainable development, but the practice of it. Again, agriculture, forestry, and fishing will be a sector that will be at risk. What does it mean for livelihood? What does it mean for land management? What does it mean as well in terms of water resources, and how we're going to ensure that irrigation will be stronger? I think all of those different levels of questioning are being addressed currently in different planning in Southeast Asia. So to finish my presentation, and I hope I have been kind of clear enough with those 4 different parts. When we think about the water, energy, and food nexus, when we think about anticipatory governance and the practice of it, and how we think the future, and how we can embrace that concept and that approach to induce a mindset related to sustainable development. I think there is a couple of key insights in the regions, but as well in the work that has been conducted, not only by an institution, for example, but by many different types of stakeholders. And I think that one of the most important is the wealth nexus is just more than a concept. It's a form of political discourse. People usually can't really define it, but they're going to follow it as a vision. As let's think together about how to address water, energy, and food together. Let's not give up on one just because it's too complex. Another key insight as well is this understanding that we're navigating with complexity, with uncertainty. And what we are currently thinking today and how it's going to shape the future is something that requires inclusiveness, that require many voices. There is not just one expert. We need more people to be engaged and to influence those futures. One of the key challenges that we have had as well in the region is anticipatory governance and how you can really build capacity related to that. And having people in the regions with the appropriate, let's say, understanding, experience, or resources, degree that are relevant, it's extremely difficult when you think about what type of human resources should put in place those policy or should be able to design those investment plans. The question about the human resources, what capacity, what resource, what skill need to be developed today in order to implement those future-oriented plan. This is a critical question. Finally, one of the most important factors that distinguish that transformation is how to do it. Many of those plans have been kind of really nicely written, and different action was trying to address the different objectives. But the practical sign of how much do we need, how much money do we need, what skills need to be developed, what type of indicator of success could we see, what type of monitoring can we see, and what can need to be developed. I think really, although I'm extremely positive about the transformation I can see over the years in Southeast Asia and how people have been enabling the water and energy food nexus to be not just a part of the concept and political discourse, but really of the practice of good governance. I really feel that it's really a learning curve, a learning process, but it's a learning process where stakeholders are aware of it. So I really hope that you have a better understanding of what is water, energy, and food mixes, and the how in different countries this can shape or not their future. I hope that you understand better the interdependency, and I didn't went through again all of the different figure and map. Again, I'm happy to share more documents and work that have been produced in the region. As said earlier, I put a slide with different key resources that you can refer to. Again, I'm more than happy to discuss further about it. So thank you for your attention, and I guess it's now the time for the question and answer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rathana. I think we will now open it to questions and answers. I think there's a little bit of a scratchiness to the transmission of your voice, but I hope that will not interfere with the question and answer period, which I will turn over now to Kate Seaman.
Hello. So I already questions for the audience. Again, just a reminder that we have the question and answer box that you guys can pop your questions into. First question that we have for you is regarding demography, population and family planning, and the gender, health and education aspects of that. So how do family planning questions impact on the work that you're doing with the water, energy, and food nexus? And then I'll also ask if you can stop sharing the content. That way people can see you more clearly for the question and answer.
Thank you, Kate. And I've stopped sharing the PowerPoints. Thank you for the questions related to family planning. This is in most of the model we are working, most of the projection we are working in terms of the future of the population. It is integrated to it. Now, at national level, you will have different dynamics. At different level, you will have a different dynamic, but once again, most of the projections that you have are already integrating part of familiar planning and what will be the expected outcome of those planning.
Great, thank you. So while we wait for some more questions in the chat box, I actually had a question about how you deal with the challenges of getting people to think outside of the boxes that they work in. So how do you challenge people to think at the nexus of all of these topics rather than just the sort of stream they're used to working in? So if you get a Minister of Agriculture, how do you push them to think sort of outside of that?
Well, so if we have a Minister of Agriculture, we usually cannot push him to do anything or to think differently. But one of the way we can always engage with anyone is thinking about the future. We usually ask them to think of a relative or even the daughter or the son, and to think of what they're going to eat 10 years from now or 20 years from now, or where they're going to study and what will be the degree that will be the best degree to have in the next 20 years. A lot of our work is a start of a discussion of multiple future. Many people feel that their way of living is rather in one box, and whatever they're doing is at present time. So what we do at first when we start our workshop and the way we build the dialogue and the trust is to allow them to have that moment to reflect about something that is bigger, which usually they lose track of. It's not that they are negative or that they don't have the intellectual capacity. I think a lot is about not having the time to reflect on.
Great, thank you. We have another question from the audience. Could you give some examples of successful outcomes of your work using the Nexus approach?
So a couple of a good example, and again we'll have that on the institutional website, is the Nexus approach was used paired with the scenario work for designing the first climate change policy on agriculture and climate change in Cambodia. It has been as well supporting policy brief and provincial policy related to sustainable farming of coffee in Vietnam. So we have multiple examples all across the region where CCAFS is working, where water, energy, and food are so important for the well-being of most of the people. And again, it just give you this positivity that things can happen.
Great, thank you. I'm going to wait and see if we get any more questions. Professor Mahmoudi, did you have any?
Actually, I do have a question. I was wondering if you could comment on your concerns regarding maybe places in the world that we are experiencing conflict around the scarcity of water, food, and other, essential.
The Rohingyas as well, is we are talking about people. We're talking about actual people that are dying. So when I have people saying, okay, well, the water and energy and food nexus, and we can discuss about that later. We can think about that later. It's very important to keep in mind that we have people still dying because they don't have access to water, or they don't have access to proper energy to feed the hospital, for example, or they don't have proper food safety legislation related to food, and you will get still like newborn babies or children being poisoned because there is no regulation related to that. I think it's really important to bring as well the death related and the fact that currently people are suffering from the lack of synergy and coordination among those sectors.
Thank you. And we have another question from the audience about how the approach you're using integrates different sources of knowledge in problem solving. So what your experiences of integrating local and expert knowledge bases?
I have to say that it is a kind of symphony. It can start a bit chaotically, but when you place people in the same room and people are willing to share, there is a mutual respect that is being developed, and you will be very surprised to see how fast this mutual respect can be shared in one room, and where even if you are an expert and you are willing to listen, other farmers are going to be willing as well to listen and to understand better. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding of this negativity, or the expert is not going to try to talk to me, or the farmer doesn't know how to translate that. I think there is more to human being, and there is this capacity to listen and to respect. That I think is one of the best way to overcome this cacophony.
Great, thank you. We have about 4 minutes left, so if there are any more questions, or Professor Mahmoudi has a question, I think.
I do have another question. I appreciate your emphasizing that, you know, these are human beings that are suffering. These are lives that are being taken. And I was wondering, you mentioned in your talk that some 1 billion people are, you know, experiencing hunger in the world. And I wondered if you would speak to this problem, because in one of your slides, you showed how, you know, there is a lot of food that is being wasted. And I was just wondering if you could tell us, are there any realistic measures that are being taken by various institutions globally to deal with this problem of the 1 billion hungry people? Thank you.
Thank you. I will have different name like IFPRI, FAO, that are trying to different UN agency or international agency that are trying to address those issues related to hunger. When we an example from Southeast Asia and again from Cambodia and Vietnam, some of our research when we were looking to the waste and the food waste, what was extremely shocking was that most of the waste was at the harvest. So the person that was putting most of the food away was actually the farmer. And it came kind of why so? Or why the farmer are not going to maximize that food? Well, basically because the knowledge of the farmer was changing, and that everything for the farmer was about being able to pick the best crop, the best looking crop. The best looking crop, the one that he can trade and the one that he can sell as a high price. The rest will be directly put into waste because he will not have time to convert that as a future organic fertilizer or convert that as a feed for the animal. And this kind of behavior of having a constant kind of supply is something that you can see across the value chain as something that many agencies are trying to address. It's not so much about what you produce, but is how you are perceiving what you are eating and what you can eat. I know that some campaign, for example, in Europe was about the ugly food and trying to bring back the ugly food into the plate, which will mitigate the waste related to the food waste that I was talking about, for example.
Thank you very much. So I think we're out of time now. And so I just wanted to thank you again, especially for staying up so late to talk with us as well.
No. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to the next presenter and the discussion.
Thank you. So we will be going to a short coffee break now. We will be returning at 11:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So about 15 minutes time we'll return with our next presenter, but we'll have a short break now so everybody can stand up, stretch, get a drink, and we'll be back in 15 minutes.